And protests continue in Michigan over the fatal shooting of Patrick Lawyer by a white officer earlier this month. The crowd chanted and marched to the city's police headquarters, demanding justice as the investigation into the case continues. And Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle make their first public appearance in Europe, visiting the Invictus Games at The Hague after having quit royal life and moving on to North America 2 years ago. This after they had visited Queen Elizabeth II in Britain on Thursday. Now, just days after being hit by an explosion in the Black Sea, Moscow has confirmed that its flagship missile cruiser Moskva has indeed sunk in the Black Sea. The 510-crew missile cruiser was a symbol of Russia's military power and was also leading its naval offensive in this war against Ukraine. Now, what is interesting is that the United States, which earlier had been fairly ambivalent in terms of what led to the sinking of this flagship carrier, has now backed Ukraine's claims, stating that the Russian elite warship was indeed hit by the Neptune cruise missiles that were fired by Ukraine. The Pentagon said on Friday that the Ukrainian forces have hit the Russian warship with 2 Neptune missiles, causing it to catch fire, eventually leading to its sinking to the bottom of the Black Sea. Now, the Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby asserted that the damage to the Russian warship will impact Russia's capability in waging this war in the near future, and that Moscow could change its approach after this incident.
They only have 3 in this class. It's a ship that is roughly 600 feet long. It has a crew of almost more than 400, almost 500 sailors on board. And it's basically designed for air defense. That's what this ship is designed to do, not unlike our own cruisers. So it's going to have an impact on their capabilities, certainly in the near term.
Meanwhile, the Central Intelligence Agency's director, William Burns, has said that the threat of Russia potentially using nuclear weapons in Ukraine could not be taken lightly. During an address recently, Burns spoke of the potential desperation and the setbacks that are being faced by the Russian President Vladimir Putin in this ongoing war, and how he might now change his stance to shift the wind in his favor.
Given the potential desperation of President Putin and the Russian leadership, given the setbacks that they've faced so far militarily, none of us can take lightly the threat posed by a potential resort to tactical nuclear weapons or low-yield nuclear weapons.
Now remember, there is discrepancy as to the cause of the cruiser ship's destruction, while Ukraine has claimed that it hit Moscow with anti-ship cruise missiles. Kremlin has denied this claim, saying that there was an incident of the ammunition that was stored in the ship that suddenly caught fire, which triggered an explosion. Now, according to reports, parts of the Russian ship are now being towed to a port to assess the incident. Meanwhile, Moscow has warned Washington over military aid to Ukraine. In the latest, Russia has now formally protested the United States' ongoing shipments of weapons to Ukraine, sending a diplomatic note to the State Department warning of unpredictable consequences. This, of course, has come as the United States has said that it is preparing to send an additional $800 million of military aid to Ukraine. The Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson has confirmed that Moscow has sent diplomatic notes to the United States and to other nations about supplying weapons to Ukraine. In a statement obtained by Washington Post, Moscow has urged on the United States and its allies to stop the militarization of Ukraine and the further escalation of this conflict. And our correspondent Susan Tehrani has been tracking the story very closely for us and has sent us this report from New York. Listen in.
The Russian embassy in Washington's warning to the State Department this week that the continued shipment of military aid to Ukraine by the United States and NATO could cause, quote, unpredictable consequences comes as Moscow's weeks-long invasion of its western neighbor rages on. It also comes at a time when one of Russia's Navy's most important warships sunk in the Black Sea after it was struck by Ukrainian Neptune anti-ship missiles. Experts say the loss of the Moskva, the flagship of Russia's Black Sea fleet, is significant both symbolically and militarily. And while it may not deal a heavy blow to Russia's overall military operations, it is significant. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians, for their part, say that this latest strike indicates that with the right military assistance and equipment, Ukraine does have a chance to win this war.
Meanwhile, the American microblogging company Twitter is putting out all stops to shield itself from hostile acquisition bids. In a move to thwart billionaire Elon Musk's hostile takeover bid, the network has now announced a poison pill plan. And this is, of course, to make it harder for the Tesla CEO to get a controlling stake in Twitter. 2 weeks ago, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, announced his 9% stake in the company, while this week he's offered to buy the entire company at $43 billion evaluation. The unsolicited bid by Musk to buy the company has sent shockwaves through the big tech world. However, at this point, Musk's proposed buyout faces several hazards, including possible rejection. Assembling the money is, of course, another challenge, but if consummated, the takeover could have some significant impacts on key social media service. Now, the Twitter board has jointly adopted what is called a shareholder rights plan, which is known as the poison pill. The plan kicks in if an investor buys more than 15% of the shares without the director's agreement. Elon Musk holds 9% of the Twitter shares. He was offered a seat at the board, but then he turned it down. He's the largest shareholder after mutual fund giant Vanguard. The measure, of course, makes it harder for a buyer to build too big a stake. Without the board's approval, the plan will allow selling other shares, more shares, to other shareholders at a discount. This eventually dilutes the holdings of new investors, and the poison pill could be in place for 364 days. Experts consider this measure as a potent tool against corporate raiders. However, Twitter has also said that the plan does not prevent discussing or even agreeing to an acquisition. The Musk has not directly addressed the poison pill plan by the Twitter board, but has tweeted that the board will face titanic legal liabilities if it goes against the interests of shareholders by rejecting his offer. Musk has also tweeted that Twitter's shareholders should have a say on his offer. He posted a poll on Twitter in which most users, in fact, agreed with him. Now, if the bid were to be rejected, Musk will also reconsider his position as a Twitter shareholder. Now, apart from Musk, technology-focused private equity firm Thoma Bravo has informed Twitter that it is exploring the possibility of putting together a bid. Now, it remains possible that a private equity firm could boost Musk's bid by partnering with him. Now, Twitter's board is still assessing Elon Musk's offer. It would put the offer to the company's shareholders for a vote if it were to approve it. Now, Twitter's board is expected to take several more days to assess Musk's bid and draft its response. Meanwhile, the COVID-19 infections are on the rise in India's capital. Interestingly, New Delhi reported as many as about 325 new infections on Thursday. Now, this is said to be the highest single jump in the number of cases in the last 40 days. Now, according to the numbers that have been put out by the Delhi government, the capital's positivity rate is now at about 2.39%. This is a jump of almost about 0.5% from last week. Now, according to a report, there's also been a 48% rise in the number of home isolation cases in the national capital in the last 1 week. Now, according to reports, the Delhi Disaster Management Authority will hold a meeting on the 20th of April to discuss measures to prevent the spread of the coronavirus in the city. The Delhi government has also issued a fresh COVID advisory for schools. Students and teachers at all private schools have been instructed to wear face masks and adhere to social distancing rules. The schools have been asked to inform the state if any COVID-19 infection were to be detected, and also suggested closing down the schools where infections appear if required. Now, the infection surge comes just a few days after the Delhi government has scrapped its mandatory outdoor mask policy, although it has advised people to wear a mask, but those without one in public spaces will not be penalized anymore. Now, given the recent uptick in the number of cases, doctors in the city have urged people not to panic and adhere to the virus control norms as much as possible. While COVID-19 cases are up in the charts in New Delhi, India's overall figure remains low. The country reported just 949 cases on Friday, taking the overall tally of infections to just about 11,000. Meanwhile, people are taking energy prices into their own hands by switching to community-led energy production. As the rise in prices does not seem to be slowing down, hundreds of small groups that are creating energy around the United Kingdom are demanding that the government should make more efforts to support them. Take a look.
Energy production is going off-grid and into the heart of the community as households brace themselves for energy price hikes. The country has seen a massive surge in the number of people who are signing up to join community schemes that generate electricity. Around 350 local councils in the UK are supporting efforts aimed at making a legal change that would make it easier for community energy groups to sell power. The wind turbines used for this are entirely owned by the customers.
The turbine is now completed. It's generating energy.
You have a chunk of this.
That's right.
It's your turbine.
I have a small chunk of that turbine. I put up just under £1,000. It'll take about 100 and something pounds off my energy bill a year.
As per the experts, community energy has the potential to become a part of a wider consumer movement.
I think the time has come that we don't need our energy assets to be owned by large companies. They'll always be a part of the mix, but I think consumers can increasingly be at the table as well.
However, there are also some who feel that the government could do more when it comes to supporting community-generated energy.
The reason that community energy has stalled is that the government, whilst saying that it's really important and that they really support it, have done nothing. They promised a plan in the net zero strategy, and there was no plan.
The roofs of residential buildings are also being assessed to see whether they can be fitted with solar panels.
We have to, in some instances, limit the size of the installation we can put on the roof because whilst we benefit from the economies of scale in installing at that site, any excess generation spills into the grid for which we get very little return. If we were able to sell that electricity locally at more of a market rate, then we will be able to use buildings which had very large roofs.
However, there are plenty of places where this technology can be used. Members of these communities feel that everyone who has the ability should be looking into getting community energy schemes locally, since there are so many local authority buildings and houses that are perfect for installing solar panels. In the Brecon Beacons, the stream is successfully generating power for users, but how does it work? The water comes in through smaller pipes which generate electricity through the turbine. Some energy customers feel that there should be more of a mix of big providers and community initiatives. So as prices rise, communities could cut their bills if they can install their own energy technology and tap into people's power. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
All right, let's also now take a quick look as to what is making news in the world of sports. Let's start with some footballing action where AC Milan have retained their 2-point lead at the top of the Italian Serie A with a 2-0 victory over Genoa. Without a goal in their previous 2 league games, Milan did not take long to get onto the score sheet at the San Siro Stadium, with Rafael lead opening the scoring in the 11th minute. But then they again fell flat in the second half against the relegation-threatened Genoa and had to wait until the 87th minute to seal the victory. Brazilian midfielder Junior Messias grabbed the second goal with a powerful strike. The defending champions Inter Milan kept pace with their city rivals with a 3-1 victory at Spezia on Friday night. After a pretty cagey start, Croatian midfielder Marcelo Brozovic swept the ball home just after the half-hour mark. Argentine ace Lautaro Martinez doubled the visitors' advantage in the 73rd minute. but a tense finale was set up as Spezia got onto the score sheet. However, Alexis Sanchez ensured a third win in a row for Inter Milan with a goal in injury time. And second-placed Inter have a game in hand over AC Milan and will go top with a victory in that clash. Meanwhile, heavyweights Manchester City and Liverpool renew hostilities in the FA Cup semi-finals later today at the Wembley Stadium. The two sides played out a pulsating 2-2 draw last week, which keeps the Premier League title race on the knife's edge. Now, both teams could in fact also meet in the Champions League finals after sealing their place in the last four of the competition. Having already claimed the EFL Cup this season, Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool remain in contention for an unprecedented quadruple, while Pep Guardiola's City are still on course for a memorable treble. Now, our next story is about Joe Biden, the President of the United States of America and also a self-proclaimed gaffe machine. In 2018, Biden had confessed that he is prone to gaffes. Now, 4 years on, he's only living up to what he had said at a recent event in North Carolina. He appeared, believe it or not, to be shaking hands with no one. Quite literally, he turned around after his speech and then shook hands with thin air. The gaffe has now opened a can of worms. American citizens are saying their president actually needs immediate help. Our next report gets you the details.
Joe Biden is a gaffe machine. We're not saying this. The US president himself admitted this in 2018. Announcing his bid for the 2020 presidential race, he himself acknowledged his gaffe-prone nature, but stressed that he's the most qualified person to run the country. Not sure about whether he's lived up to the promise, but his gaffes have certainly not ended. At a recent gathering in North Carolina, the 79-year-old U.S. president delivered an arousing speech and then turned around to shake hands with thin air. Watch how. The video has since gone viral, and Twitter users are having a field day. Some say he was shaking hands with his voter base. Others say it was John Cena. And yet others are pointing out how this wasn't the first time. How the US president has on numerous occasions shaken hands with absolutely no one. The handshake gaffe is certainly chucklesome, but it's just one among many, from slips of tongue to falling asleep to abusing on mic. Biden has done it all. At last year's COP26 climate summit, Biden fell asleep for more than 30 seconds. He was then woken by a staff member and then proceeded to applaud as if he listened to the entire speech. This was last year. Biden was caught on a hot mic, cursing a Fox News reporter at a White House event. On another occasion, he called Kamala Harris the president instead of vice president. On yet another occasion, he called her the first lady.
In the arrangement, who's on the stage because of the first lady's husband.
Sometimes he gets confused, trying to find his way off the stage. Embarrassing or not, Biden's gaffes help him stay in the headlines more than his actual policies ever do. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Well, that's all the time we have in this edition of the News Bulletin. Stay tuned to WION.
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hopping to a Taliban headquarters now.
90 hours of non-stop live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent
A friendship that has stood the test of time, dehyphenating geopolitical equations and focusing on bilateral issues.
The place where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle.
As you can see, the reserve forces are getting ready. They're picking up the weapons here.
Ringside, Ukrainian military drills. The Ukraine conflict is intensifying. WION brings you all sides of the story.
The reserve forces are
One of the
getting
many
ready.
protest
They're
marches
picking up the weapons and they will
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all if you fail to prove us wrong God help us.
And their dependency on oil and gas, or for example buying Russian oil and gas.
Now the war have made green energy much more compatible as finance.
And do you think that's possible right now, given 40% of Europe's natural gas and
we will need some time, because natural and renewable energy doesn't come in one day.
Well, thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start with the top stories of the day. The Twitter board moves to defend itself against Elon Musk's $43 billion takeover bid by adopting what it describes as a poison pill plan that allows the existing shareholders to purchase stocks at a substantial discount in order to dilute the holdings of the new investors. And Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif rejects Oil and Gas Regulatory Authority's proposal for an unprecedented hike in the price of petroleum products, saying that this will unleash a mountain of inflation on the people of Pakistan, and he, as the Prime Minister of Pakistan, would not want the people to suffer that way. And Russia has warned of intensified attacks on Ukrainian capital Kiev in response to the alleged strike on Russian soil. The Kremlin has accused Ukraine of bombing Bryansk region, wounding 8 people, which the Ukrainian army has denied. And the far-right presidential candidate Marie Le Pen has said that her odds of winning are proportional to the hate that she's been getting, defending her project, which she's called as democratic and not a radical. And protests continue in Michigan over the fatal shooting of Patrick Lawyer by a white officer earlier this month. The crowds chanted and marched through the city's police headquarters, demanding for justice as the investigation of the case continues. And Harry and his wife Meghan Markle make their very first public appearance in Europe, visiting the Invictus Games at The Hague after having quit royal life and moved to North America 2 years ago. This after they visited Queen Elizabeth II in Britain on Thursday. Now, just days after taking power, Pakistan's new government has decided not to roll back billions of dollars in terms of fuel subsidies for the time being. Now, this move, of course, has come despite the strain on public funds. The Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has cited the possible backlash if the government in Pakistan were to resort to raising fuel prices at this point of time, especially when inflation is already high. Now, despite the soaring global prices, a cut in petrol and electricity tariffs was announced in February by former Premier Imran Khan. And Imran Khan's bid was intended to win back popular support, but he was ousted in a no-confidence vote last week. Now, the country's oil and gas regulatory authority had advised the government to scrap the subsidies and raise prices effective from today. But since a reversal of the fuel subsidies will be politically sensitive, the new government is, of course, trying to shore up popular support. It has decided against raising the price of petrol and other fuels in Pakistan. While announcing the move, the new Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said that people will curse the new government if it were to take such a step.
21 रुपए और 50 रुपए ये बढ़ा रहे थे मुख्तलिफ मदाद में 50 रुपए पर लीटर 21 रुपए बहुत बड़ा एक महंगाई का एक पहाड़ अगर आवाम पे गिरता तो 3 दिन में लोग हमें बददुआएं देना शुरू हो जाए उनको क्या पता कि पिछली हुकूमत ने क्या चक्कर किया और क्या चक्कर चलाया ताकि वो हमें लपेटें उनको पता था कि शायद ये हुकूमत नहीं आ जाएगी तो फिर ये जाने उनके काम जाने चुनाचे मैंने 21 रुपए लीटर और 50 रुपए लीटर वाली समरी मुस्तरद कर दी है.
Now, the measure was initially estimated to cost almost about $2.1 billion, and now the current government's decision to keep the prices unchanged will force it to give another heavy amount in terms of subsidies from the 16th till the 30th of April. The country will be put under an additional $664 million burden. Now, Pakistan's external debt is said to be almost about $130 billion. The economic crisis is further escalated by the trade deficit that increased to $35.4 billion. Inflation in Pakistan is said to be almost about 12.7%. Officials have been warning about the fiscal fallout of continuing with the subsidies. Now, Pakistan's finance ministry's top officials fear that the subsidy has stretched government finances in a way that cannot be sustained. The move also puts an ongoing International Monetary Fund rescue program at risk. Pakistan is in the middle of a $6 billion IMF bailout program. The 7th review is yet to be cleared, under which the IMF could release almost about $900 million. The 7th review started in early March, but no agreement has been reached before the collapse of the Imran Khan government. Now, in the face of the deteriorating currency, the government doesn't seem to have formulated any concrete economic reform measures at this point of time. Shehbaz Sharif is yet to announce his cabinet. The National Assembly is scheduled to meet later in the day today when Raja Pervez Ashraf of the Pakistan People's Party will assume the office of the National Assembly Speaker. Now, the National Assembly will also take up the no-confidence resolution moved against the Deputy Speaker Qasim Suri Khan, who is currently functioning as the acting Speaker. It is days after the dramatic change of guard in Pakistan. Political tensions continue to simmer. The now ousted Imran Khan government has not given up, however. They're holding mega rallies and are still claiming of a foreign conspiracy that brought down their government. They have also spoken that the opposition will crumble, that has formed the government will crumble, and the incumbent government led by Shehbaz Sharif will not last. Now, our Islamabad Bureau Chief Anas Malik sat down with the former Information Minister Fawad Chaudhry for an exclusive interview. Listen in.
I have with me Mr. Fawad Hussain Chaudhry, the former Information Minister for the Imran Khan government, the former Science and Technology Minister. Sir, thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to WION. First question, the military has now rebuked the claims by Mr. Khan, the former Prime Minister, about a conspiracy or foreign conspiracy. What do you have to say on that?
I think ISP has just confirmed the existence of latter and the internal conspiracy. So I think they have just confirmed that.
So you don't think so that there is a rebuke on that?
I don't think so. They have just confirmed what we said. They just confirmed what National Security Council said. They just reiterated the statement of National Security Council, and I believe that this is what Prime Minister Imran Khan exactly used same words later on. So they just confirmed that there was an internal, in our Pakistan's political affairs, there was foreign intervention, and they also said it's a blatant one.
So the military spokesperson has said that it was not the establishment that gave any options to Prime Minister Khan during his time as the Premier, but rather the military establishment was approached by the Prime Minister House to mediate a solution. What's your take on the matter?
Well, I think there was a discussion. No one really gave any option. This was a discussion that any sane mind would have in a crisis. And yes, the army generals are worried about Pakistan's situation as much as we are. So we discussed with them, and they come up with during the discussion it propped up that these three can be options. So I won't really deny them, but maybe you can say the manner in which people are saying that we approached or they approached, this is not right.
Over to the foreign policy bit. Prime Minister Khan has prima facie or visibly left a crippled foreign policy dynamic for the new government to encounter, be that the relations with China, Gulf or West and others. What's your take on the matter?
Well, I believe that if an independent foreign policy is a crippled policy, then what can I say about that? But fact of the matter is, after a very brief stint of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto Shaheed, the only time Pakistan formed its independent foreign policy was under Imran Khan. The way he handled Afghanistan, the way he handled his relationship with China, with Muslim world, is commendable. He is now a leader of Islam and not only a leader of Pakistan. So his personal stature, the way he tackled Islamophobia, the way he spoke about that, this has elevated his personal stature and stature of Pakistan immensely. I would say that he is now truly only Muslim leader who represents the issues Islam and Muslims are facing all around the world, and this makes him so special.
Meanwhile, long power cuts, acute shortage of food and essentials have now led to weeks of widespread anti-government demonstrations. Well, the calls of the president, the incumbent President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, to resign are stronger than ever. Fuel rationing is now making the Sri Lankan crisis even worse. The cash-strapped Sri Lankan nation has imposed fuel rationing in yet another series of worsening economic crisis. Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, which accounts for nearly about two-thirds of the retail fuel market, has now imposed limits on the amount of fuel that an individual can purchase in one go. It also banned pumping fuel into cans to prevent people from stocking up. The announcement came when most pumping stations were already out of petrol, and the ones that were open had some really long queues. And that's not all. The country's main cooking gas retailer has said that it has completely run out of stock, but hopes to purchase new supplies by Monday to resume distribution. Further, households are also experiencing nearly about 12-hour-long power cuts, and there is a massive shortage of essentials due to the falling value of the Sri Lankan rupee. The fuel shortage in another worsening economic crisis that's been sparked in Sri Lanka because of the very poor mismanagement of finances by the incumbent government. There are widespread demonstrations across the country that are calling for the president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, to resign immediately. The tens of thousands of people kept up a protest outside Rajapaksa's office for the 7th straight day on Friday, demanding that he quit over the economic hardship that he's caused to the 22 million people in the country. And our correspondent, Dasuni Athauda from Colombo, has been tracking the story very closely for us and has sent us this report. Listen.
Sri Lanka Ceylon Petroleum Corporation today announced officially that it is planning to ration fuel across the country. However, many fuel stations run by the CPC, as you can see right behind me, has run out of petrol and diesel. Nevertheless, citizens across the country, in a desperate move, are even willing to stand in line for hours, at times even exceeding needing 2 hours to obtain the bare minimum of fuel here in the country. Sri Lanka has been reporting shortages of not only fuel but also of gas and certain commodities over the past few months due to its worsening economic crisis.
All right, let's now get you some updates from the State of Israel, where after having built what it calls as the Iron Dome, the State of Israel has now spent more money and has invested more research to ramp up its military capabilities, and it now claims that it has installed what it describes as an iron beam. Now, the Israelis claim that this will be the world's first energy-based weapons system, which will use lasers to strike down incoming missiles and mortars. Take a look. Now, electrification is a hot trend in the automotive market. Companies around the world are in fact betting big on electric vehicles, and not surprisingly, some exciting electric cars are being showcased at the 2022 New York International Auto Show. Our next report gets you the details.
Electric vehicles are dominating the 2022 New York International Auto Show. One of the top-performing EVs at the event is the Hyundai Ioniq 5. The vehicle won the World Car of the Year award. It also bagged the World Electric Car and World Car Design trophies at the show. An all-electric updated SUV Chrysler Airflow and the hybrid Alfa Romeo Tonale also caught the attention of visitors. The Tonale has about 30 miles of electric range before switching to gas. It's no secret that companies and buyers are going to electric for a variety of reasons.
Well, one of the big things that's happening is sort of a general move towards electrification. It's better for the planet, that kind of thing. But also there's a real spike in consumer interest in electric cars right now because of rising gas prices. With an average price of over $4 a gallon in the United States right now, at Cox Automotive, we saw a 69% jump in interest in electric cars in March versus January. So people are really looking at their options so they don't have to burn down their entire budgets on gasoline.
Another thing we see at the New York Auto Show is that there are a lot of electric car startups. Each one of them is trying to establish itself as a unique entity.
One of them is Indie EV, and they've got a focus on gaming. They've got a supercomputer under the hood that you can use for gaming purposes. Whether that's really relevant to car shoppers or just a gimmick that entices investors remains to be seen. One thing we have seen, though, is it is very, very hard to build a car and sell it to the public, but it's very, very easy to build a concept and build some hype. So I guess we'll see how many of the car makers here actually go to production.
The ongoing 2022 New York International Auto Show will end on April 24th.
All right, now on to some sports news now. The saga surrounding Joe Root and England's Test captaincy is finally over. The 31-year-old on Friday decided to step down from the role after almost about 5 years at the helm, amid some pressure from a number of his predecessors. Joe Root is England's most successful captain, but pressure had been building following a wretched run of results over the last 15 months. Now, England won their first 3 tests of 2021, but since then have managed to win just once. Joe Root continued to score runs by the bucketful and then ended the year 2021 with a haul of almost about 1,700 runs that saw him named as the ICC Test Cricketer of the Year. He also managed to survive the purge after the 4-0 Ashes drubbing, but the series defeat in West Indies last month was the final nail in his coffin. He attempted to stay on despite criticism from former captains Michael Atherton and Nasser Hussain, amongst others, but then walked away earlier yesterday morning. In a statement released by the England-Wales Cricket Board, Joe Root has said, and I quote, "It's been the most challenging decision that I've had to make in my career. But having discussed this with my family and those closest to me, I know the timing is right. I'm immensely proud to have captained my country and will look back on the past 5 years with enormous pride. It's been an honour to have done the job and to be the custodian of what is the pinnacle of English cricket. I have loved leading my country, but recently it has hit home as to how much of a toll it has taken on me and the impact it has had on me away from the game." Now, there is no clear frontrunner at the moment to replace Joe Root, but Ben Stokes, non-committal due to injury issues, and England are also in the market for a new head coach and director of cricket, with Chris Silverwood and Ashley Giles having been sacked post the Ashes debacle. Justin Langer is currently the favourite to take over as the head coach role. Now, Easter is just around the corner and a British-based chocolate maker is hoping to celebrate it differently. His Easter eggs are said to be wrapped without plastic, and the cocoa beans have been sourced sustainably. Our next report gets you the details.
Supermarket shelves are stacked high with cheap chocolate eggs. But one company is making the difference, especially when it comes to chocolate making for its Easter eggs. Welcome to Chocolada. It's based in Falmouth in southwest England. It began as the passion project for Mike Longman, a former pastry chef and the brand's founder. Chocolada is one of a handful of bean-to-bar chocolate makers in the UK.
We create an uncompromising Easter egg in every way that we can. It still tells a story of incredible projects, incredible farms, but it's in an almost impossible shape of this balloon of an object, packaged completely plastic-free, which really does give you something to celebrate Easter with.
Chocolada's process begins with sourcing organically grown beans from single-estate, family-run plantations. These are to be found across the world, from Madagascar to the Dominican Republic. The beans are roasted, winnowed, stone-ground, roll-refined and conched, only to develop the chocolate's individual flavour before being left to mature for at least 28 days. The chocolate is then tempered and crafted into bars and eggs before being wrapped in plastic-free packaging. In the process, also restoring some antique production machines.
Lots of chocolate makers buy big stainless steel machinery. It obviously serves a purpose and it makes chocolate, but actually we want our machines that have made chocolate perfectly in the past to do exactly the same for us. Talking about our roaster that's about 100 years old, it's obviously served its purpose brilliantly well and we want to continue its life.
Their products are sold at markets, Chocolada's own shop, as well as in the high-end department store Selfridges in London. These eggs cost up to $34, but credit the company's ethos and the taste, customers don't quite feel the pinch. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Well, that's all the time we have in this edition of the News Bulletin. Stay tuned to WION.
As France votes to elect a new president, it's Macron versus Le Pen again. Macron, Le Pen advanced to April 24th runoff. Pro-European economic liberal versus far-right nationalist. Will Macron win a second term?
Et donc, est-ce que...
Or will France choose its first woman leader?
The French president has himself admitted that this election...
WION gets you ground reports from Paris. French election 2022. 2022. WION continuous coverage.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hopping through a Taliban headquarters now.
90 hours of non-stop live broadcasts. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent
A friendship that has stood the test of time, dehyphenating geopolitical equation and focusing on bilateral issues.
Place where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle.
As you can see, the reserve forces are getting ready. They're picking up the weapons here.
Ringside, Ukrainian military drills. The Ukraine conflict is intensifying. WION brings you all sides of the story.
The reserve forces are
One of the many
getting
protest
ready.
marches.
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker, weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to...
Hello and welcome, I'm Ankit Tuteja and you are watching Tech It Out. This week we review the Oneplus 10 Pro 5G and help you decide if you should buy the latest flagship smartphone. Also, our focus is on puppy scams that are targeting pet lovers. Let's get started. The Oneplus 10 Pro 5G is finally here, but the question is, just how exciting is the new phone? And should you buy it? Let's find out.
This is the newest OnePlus flagship smartphone, the OnePlus 10 Pro 5G. The phone is loaded with a lot of high-end features. We spent some time with it, and here's what we think about it. Now, there's a thing about OnePlus. It knows how to make attractive phones with a minimalist design. The OnePlus 10 Pro is the latest example. Packed in an aluminium frame, the phone looks elegant. While the front panel may be mistaken for one on any other high-end Android phone, it's the rear panel that's eye-catching. The redesigned camera system at the back makes it look bold. Covered in ceramic, the rear camera module not only feels premium, but also provides 30% greater resistance against scratches. The slim profile and lightweight design make the phone comfortable to use, even for long hours. Next comes the display. The OnePlus 10 Pro's 6.7-inch QHD Plus display allows the device to adjust its refresh rate between 1 Hz and 120 Hz. As a result, the OnePlus 10 Pro's display consumes less power than displays fixed at a 90 Hz refresh rate. As you would know, a higher refresh rate results in smoother motions and a more fluid user experience. The display is bright and has an excellent color accuracy. Even in direct sunlight, it's viewable. We must say the OnePlus 10 Pro 5G passes the design and display tests with flying colors. The camera is another important factor in a phone. It's time to find out how well the OnePlus 10 Pro's cameras fare. The phone houses a camera system developed in collaboration with Hasselblad, a company known as a premium camera maker. It's credited for its high imaging quality and color performance. The phone has 3 rear cameras, a 48-megapixel main camera, a 50-megapixel ultra-wide camera, and an 8-megapixel telephoto camera. The technology and specifications appear to be promising. But does its triple camera system live up to expectations? We put it to different tests, and here are the results. These have been captured in the regular photo mode. Look at how sharp and detailed the close-ups turn out to be. On certain occasions, the autofocus wasn't as fast as we expected. The camera does a good job even in portrait mode. video stabilization is impressive. And this is a time-lapse taken with the phone. We put it to a slow-mo test as well. It also gets a fisheye mode for clicking wider images. We find this feature a little gimmicky. What we do miss is the macro mode. Though the phone's camera system has many other modes and features that can improve your mobile photography experience. The 32-megapixel front camera is also a good performer. All in all, the OnePlus 10 Pro's camera captures good light, reproduces true-to-life colors, and produces detailed results, even in environments with low light. The cameras get a thumbs up. The OnePlus 10 Pro comes with an Android 12 that is customized with Oxygen OS. It is powered by a Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset. During most of the tasks, including high-intensive ones, the performance is fast and smooth. While there was no lag during the review period, the phone did heat up when used for around an hour on a hot summer day. The OnePlus 10 Pro sports a 5000 mAh battery with 80-watt fast charging. The fully drained battery charges to full in approximately 40 minutes. The battery easily lasts for a day. The OnePlus 10 Pro includes stereo speakers that generate fairly loud audio. The phone is available in two colors, volcanic black and emerald forest. The variant with 8GB RAM and 128GB storage is priced at 66,999 rupees, which is nearly $880. The other model with 12GB RAM and 256GB storage is priced at 71,999 rupees, which is about $950. Just like all other OnePlus flagship devices, the OnePlus 10 Pro will receive 3 major Android updates and 4 years of security updates. Now it's time for the most important question. Should you buy it? The OnePlus 10 Pro 5G is one of the best flagship phones on the market. If you are looking for a high-end Android phone, you must consider it.
Cyber frauds are becoming increasingly common. Some miscreants are even exploiting people's desire to bring home a pet. More details in our next report.
Are you planning to bring a puppy home? We're here to tell you that you should not buy one online. We say this for 2 reasons. Firstly, most online puppies are from puppy mills and are sold by irresponsible dog breeders. Secondly, and this reason is the focus of our story today, puppy scams are becoming more common. Miscreants are exploiting your love for pets. In fact, there has been a significant increase in puppy scams since the COVID-19 pandemic started. According to the Better Business Bureau, in 2021, 35% of all online shopping scams reported to it were pet scams. In the United States, Google sued an alleged puppy scammer who used its services to sell fake pets. This happened after elder advocacy group AARP tipped Google about the scam last September. It all started after a South Carolina resident registered a complaint. he had sent $700 in digital gift cards to an online seller for a basset hound puppy that never arrived. Google is seeking monetary damages and a court order banning the accused user from Cameroon. The lawsuit says the puppy scam harmed Google's reputation and the company had to spend over $75,000 to investigate this case. Last year, another man from a country in Central Africa pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud in a scheme to trick American consumers into paying fee for pets that were never delivered. The victims were induced to make successive payments based on false claims about transportation issues, about the animal needing insurance, and other such matters. If you must buy a pet off the internet and are engaging with a breeder or seller online, do keep these things in mind. If the seller is unwilling to send you photos and videos of the puppy or kitten other than what's advertised on their website, it is a red flag. See the pet in person before paying any money. Also, be wary if the price seems too good to be true and the seller insists on getting money up front. Ask for the company name, number, and street address. See what Google search results pop up. If you can't find anything, the name and address are probably fake. Lastly, if the seller refuses to speak to you on the phone and prefers to handle communication only by emails, it's most likely a scam. Pets are not gifts or disposable or returnable items. Getting one is a lifetime commitment. If possible, adopt a stray or one from a local animal shelter. But if you must buy one, then look for a responsible breeder for whom animal well-being is a top priority.
We know that electrification is a hot trend in the automotive market. Companies around the world are betting big on electric vehicles. Not surprisingly, some exciting electric cars are being showcased at the 2022 New York International Auto Show.
Electric vehicles are dominating the 2022 New York International Auto Show. One of the top performing EVs at the event is the Hyundai Ioniq 5. The vehicle won the World Car of the Year award. It also bagged the World Electric Car and World Car Design trophies at the show. An all-electric updated SUV Chrysler Airflow and the hybrid Alfa Romeo Tonale also caught the attention of visitors. The Tonale has about 30 miles of electric range before switching to gas. It's no secret that companies and buyers are going to electric for a variety of reasons.
Well, one of the big things that's happening is sort of a general move towards electrification. It's better for the planet, that kind of thing. But also there's a real spike in consumer interest in electric cars right now because of rising gas prices. With an average price of over $4 a gallon in the United States right now, at Cox Automotive, we saw a 69% jump in interest in electric cars in March versus January. So people are really looking at their options so they don't have to burn down their entire budgets on gasoline.
Another thing we see at the New York Auto Show is that there are a lot of electric car startups. Each one of them is trying to establish itself as a unique entity and has come up with all sorts of gimmicks.
One of them is Indie EV, and they've got a focus on gaming. They've got a supercomputer under the hood that you can use for gaming purposes. Whether that's really relevant to car shoppers or just a gimmick that entices investors remains to be seen. One thing we have seen, though, is it is very, very hard to build a car and sell it to the public, but it's very, very easy to build a concept and build some hype. So I guess we'll see how many of the car makers here actually go to production.
The ongoing 2022 New York International Auto Show will end on April 24th.
Apple has confirmed that it will start making the iPhone 13 in India. New robots now claim to treat brain disorders. The week gone by was buzzing with a lot of exciting tech developments, and we bring you the most interesting ones in our Tech Wrap.
Apple has started making the iPhone 13 in India. The phone is being produced at a local plant of Apple's Taiwanese contract manufacturer Foxconn. It's situated in the Indian state of Tamil Nadu. Apple has been shifting some areas of iPhone production from China to other markets including India. Developing nations like India, Mexico and Vietnam are becoming increasingly important to contract manufacturers as American brands are trying to diversify production away from China. The iPhone 13 is the fourth model to be produced locally after Apple launched manufacturing operations in India in 2017 with the iPhone SE. Look at this, a floating solar power plant built on a quarry lake in Germany. The photovoltaic plant will be able to provide 3 megawatts of power, which is equivalent to a typical onshore wind turbine. It comes as Germany scrambles to find alternative sources of energy and phase out its reliance on Russian oil and gas in the wake of Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. This renewable technology could help wean Germany off Russian fossil fuels. These floating panels will save 1,100 tons of carbon dioxide emissions a year, compared with the same amount of power produced from fossil fuels. The plant, with 5,800 modules on 360 floating elements, will go into service on the 24th of May. The all-new electric powerboat race series E1 has begun testing its innovative electric foiling race boat in northern Italy.
E1 Series is a new championship, a championship of electric powerboats. Electric powerboats that we will race all over the world in different areas, in lakes, in rivers, maybe in the sea also in some areas, to transform marine mobility into electric, to decarbonize the water.
The debut season of the E1 World Championship is scheduled to get underway in early 2023. Up to 12 teams and 24 pilots will compete in identical powerboats. Spotify Technology has rebranded its live audio streaming service to Spotify Live. Rolled out in June 2021 as Spotify Green Room, the service will be available as a standalone app and as a live stream function on the main Spotify app. The company has also announced a slew of new content by top artists, as it doubles down on the format at a time when virtual events continue to attract audiences. Amazon workers happen to be a third of US warehouse employees. And you would be shocked to know that in 2021, they suffered 49% of the injuries for the entire warehouse industry. This has been reported by the advocacy group Strategic Organizing Center. It's been found that Amazon workers are twice as likely to be seriously injured than people who work in warehouses for other companies. The report considers serious injuries to be ones where workers either have to take time off to recover or have their workloads reduced. The report also states that Amazon workers take longer to recover from injuries than employees at other companies. According to Amazon employees, it's not the work itself that's particularly dangerous, but rather the grueling pace the company's automated systems demand. What has long been the stuff of science fiction could soon become reality. California-based startup Bionaut Labs is planning to send miniature robots deep inside the human skull to treat brain disorders.
What we're offering is an elegant solution at the source, right? The Bionaut travels to the cyst, fenestrates it, makes a hole once, twice, multiple times, brought out, and the cyst deflates, meaning the pressure is restored directly at the place where the problem was created.
The firm Bionaut Labs plans its first clinical trials on humans in just 2 years.
What the micro-robotic technology, the Bionaut, does, it allows you to reach targets you were not able to reach, and reaching them repeatedly in the safest trajectory possible.
Unlike magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, Bionaut's apparatus is easily transportable. It's also more energy efficient, using 10 to 100 times less electricity. Social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok are flooded with skincare gadgets. One such device is the new body massage gun by TheraBody. Called the TheraFace Pro, this facial massage gun can deliver microcurrent and light therapy with interchangeable magnetic attachments. The device can be used as a deep cleansing tool to remove dirt, oil, and debris. It's priced at $399.
Well, that's all we have for you in this episode of Tech It Out. We will continue to bring you exciting inventions and updates on the latest gadgets. I will be back soon. Until then, keep watching WION World is One. And yes, don't forget to follow us on social media. For now, it's me, Untitled Chapter, signing off.
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world. People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hoping through a Taliban-led call now.
Hours of non-stop live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent
A friendship that has stood the test of time, dehyphenating geopolitical equations and focusing on bilateral issues.
The place where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle. As you can see, the reserve forces are getting ready. They're picking up the weapons here.
Ringside, Ukrainian military drills. The Ukraine conflict is intensifying. WION brings you all sides of the story.
The reserve forces are
One of the many
getting ready.
protest
They're
marches
picking up the weapons here. And they will
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all if you fail to prove us wrong. God help us.
One trillion species. 7.8 billion humans. 1.9 million species extinct. One planet. Where are we heading? What should we do? Watch Climate Tracker, only on WION. World is One.
European countries are hoping to move away and end their dependency on oil and gas, or, for example, buying Russian oil and gas.
Now, the war have made green energy much more compatible as finance.
And do you think that's possible right now, given 40% of Europe's natural gas and
we will need some time, because natural and renewable energy doesn't come in one day.
Well, thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start with the top stories of the day. Now, Elon Musk warns Twitter's board that it could face a titanic legal liability if it goes against the interests of the shareholders, adding that shareholders must have a say in the decisions of the company if it wants to adopt the poison pill plan to block its takeover bid. Meanwhile, Pakistan's National Assembly is likely to elect Raja Pervez Ashraf of the Pakistan People's Party as the new speaker in today's session, according to reports. And the Pentagon backs Ukraine's claims that the Neptune missiles that were fired by Ukraine led to the sinking of the Russian warship in the Black Sea, even as parts of the warship are being towed to the Russian port of Sevastopol to assess the incident. The United States has warned that the damage to this crucial ship will impact Russia's ability to carry out the war in Ukraine. At least 7 civilians, including a small child, are reported to have been killed after shelling hits the residential complex in Ukraine's northern city of Kharkiv, where at least about 30 people are said to have been injured in the bombing. And North Korea holds a civilian parade and also a light festival to commemorate the 110th anniversary of the birth of Kim Il-sung, who's revered in North Korea as the founder of the country. Defending champion Stefanos Tsitsipas and the second seed Alexander Zverev survive bruising quarterfinals to set up a blockbuster last four clash in Monte Carlo.
Set him up. 7-6.
All right, so let's start this broadcast with some updates that have come in from Pakistan, where just after Days after taking power, the new government in Islamabad has announced that it will not be rolling back the billions in fuel subsidies that had been given to the people in Pakistan. Now, this move, of course, has come at a time when there is a strain on public funds. But the now newly appointed Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, has cited that it is not the right time for the government to increase fuel prices in Pakistan. And this despite the soaring price of crude oil, a cut in petrol and electricity tariffs, remember, had been announced by the Imran Khan government in the month of February. And Imran's bid had been to win popular support. But he was ousted in a no-confidence vote last week, and the country's oil and gas regulatory authority had advised that the government should scrap the subsidies that had been announced by the Imran Khan government and should increase the price of petrol, diesel and electricity effective from today. But since a reversal of fuel subsidies will be politically sensitive for the new government that is trying to shore up popular support, the Shehbaz Sharif-led government has now decided against increasing the price of petrol and diesel and electricity for the people of Pakistan. While announcing the move, the new Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has said that people will curse the new government if it resorts to increasing the price of petrol and diesel, and therefore, he said, he will not increase the price of petrol and diesel for the people of Pakistan. Listen in to the Prime Minister.
21 रुपए और 50 रुपए ये बढ़ा रहे थे, मुख्तलिफ मदाद में 50 रुपए पर लीटर, 21 रुपए, बहुत बड़ा एक महंगाई का एक पहाड़ अगर आवाम पे गिरता तो 3 दिन में लोग हमें बददुआएं देना शुरू हो जाए। उनको क्या पता कि पिछली हुकूमत ने क्या चक्कर किया और क्या चक्कर चलाया ताकि वो हमें लपेटें। उनको पता था कि शायद ये हुकूमत नहीं आ जाएगी, तो फिर ये जाने उनके काम जाने। चुनांचे मैंने 21 रुपए लीटर और 50 रुपए लीटर वाली समरी मुस्तरद कर दी है।
So that is what Shehbaz Sharif had to say, that a mountain of inflation would have struck the people of Pakistan. Now, in the face of the deteriorating currency, the government doesn't seem to have formulated at this point of time any concrete economic reform measures. Shehbaz Sharif is yet to announce his cabinet. The National Assembly is scheduled to meet later today when Raja Pervez Ashraf of the Pakistan People's Party will assume office of the National Assembly Speaker. The National Assembly will also be taking up the no-confidence resolution that had been moved against the Deputy Speaker Qasim Khan Suri, who is currently functioning as the acting Speaker. Now, to give us more updates in terms of what's actually happening in Pakistan and how bad the prices of petrol and diesel and electricity actually are, we are joined in by our Islamabad Bureau Chief, Anas Malik, who's joining us live on this broadcast. Good morning to you, Anas. This, of course, is an important day for Pakistan. We heard the new Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, where he said that he has taken a decision not to increase the price of petrol and diesel and electricity in Pakistan, because he said this would have brought a mountain of inflation. Those are the words that he used on the people of Pakistan. How sensitive is the matter of inflation in Pakistan?
The matter is indeed very sensitive because it's at an all-time high. It's in double figures, the inflation over here in Pakistan. And with the transition in power that just took place less than a week back, this matter is it's beyond the control of the government, at least immediately, and that is one of the reasons we're seeing that this drastic measures that have been taken of looking after and bearing a subsidy on the part of the government that has been taken by the incumbent government now by not increasing the fuel prices. Now, among the other challenges is the challenge of poverty, inflation and economy that is at the forefront for this government, and that is one place that it continues to, or it will continue to battle bigger challenges or bigger hurdles in time to come, given that the budget is just around the corner on the 11th of June. Or somewhere in the mid of June rather, it is to be presented, the new budget is to be presented, and with the opposition, or what is now believed to be former opposition out on the roads under the leadership of Imran Khan, holding grand rallies. The trouble just seems to mount for the incumbent government that has literally taken charge about 5 days back. Saleh?
Absolutely indeed. Now, the Shehbaz Sharif government has not announced the cabinet yet. How soon can we expect an announcement on that front, Linus?
Well, I've just got a piece of information from our sources, and they say that almost the cabinet has been agreed upon. Now, on the foreign minister, as per sources, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari from the Pakistan People's Party will be there. Water and power will be given to Khwaja Muhammad Asif from the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz. The planning and development ministry will be given to Ehsan Iqbal, who was the former planning and development minister as well under the PMLN. The Ministry of Interior will be given to Rana Sanaullah. The Ministry of Communications will be given to Khurshid Shah from the Pakistan People's Party. The Ministry of Religious Affairs will be given to Maulana Asad Mahmood from the JUIF. The Ministry of Information, the Federal Ministry of Information, will be given to Mariam Aurangzeb from the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz. The Information Ministry for the state, that will be given to Shazia Mari from the Pakistan People's Party. Advisor on finance will be Miftah Ismail from the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz. Then the Railways Minister will be Khwaja Saad Rafiq from the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz. Information and Technology Ministry will go to Aminul Haq from the MQM. He was previously the Minister for IT as well. The Parliamentary Affairs Ministry, it's a bit disputed upon. Likely it is that Ayaz Sadiq, who is to chair today's session, is to get that. Then Petroleum and Energy Ministry is being hinted to go to Shahid Khaqan Abbasi. The Ministry for Privatization, it will be ran through an advisor, and that is likely to be Muhammad Zubair from the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz. And the Ports and Shipping Ministry is likely to go to the Muttahida Qawmi Movement. So an allied cabinet that we're looking at, and this is what the sources are saying, expecting an announcement on that sometime mid-afternoon today, because remember today is that key vote as well in Punjab on the Chief Minister of Punjab, the election of the Chief Minister of Punjab. And then in this building that's behind me, that's the Pakistani Parliament. This is where we'll be seeing the election of the Speaker as well, and the voting on the no confidence motion against the Deputy Speaker. Now, what is pertinent to mention that since there is no Speaker right now, because the previous Speaker had resigned and an election or an official announcement for the election is yet to take place. Therefore, and the Deputy Speaker also has a no confidence motion moved against him. So today's session will be chaired by the panel of chairs member Ayaz Sadiq, who hails from the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz. Saleh?
Absolutely indeed. And my last question to you, Anas, because this of course is going to be a very challenging time ahead for the newly formed government in Pakistan, and also because it is a formation of so many different parties with different ideologies that have come together. They came together to oust Imran Khan from power. But the question, of course, a lot of people have been asking is, how stable will this coalition be, and have these parties agreed on a common minimum program that they'll be implementing over the course of the next few weeks and months?
Well, they say they have two programs. One is the short-term program and one is the long-term program. I was part of the meeting that the Prime Minister undertook with journalists, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, on Tuesday after taking charge. And he said that they've got two plans laid out. He's also vowed that his aspirations are to continue the electoral tenure that is about a year and a half left. And that only then they would want to go ahead with the elections. But at the same time, he gave a caveat that it is up to the allies that till when they decide to go ahead and call for an elections, because remember, electoral reforms is the priority. So that's a bit unclear how long will this continue. But one thing that is very certain is that with the apprehensions that allied party had over getting into cabinet, Shehbaz Sharif has clearly managed to convince them, and it gives a semblance or a hint that this coalition might just continue for at least a year, if not a year and a half, until the end of the electoral term, or this cabinet allies will continue for a year and a half at least, so that the electoral process and the transition for the upcoming elections and then the upcoming government, as and when they would be held sometime next year in October or November, that could probably be very, very smooth. Saleh?
Absolutely indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Anas Malik, for joining us and getting us all those updates from Islamabad there.
France votes to elect a new president, it's Macron versus Le Pen again. Macron, Le Pen advanced to April 24th runoff. Pro-European economic liberal versus far-right nationalist. Will Macron win a second term? Or will France choose its first woman leader?
The French president has himself admitted that this election...
WION gets you ground reports from Paris. French election 2022. WION, continuous coverage.
Now, the 24th of April is, of course, being seen as the big day in France. It is the final round of voting for the presidential elections. But exactly a week before that, the top two contenders are debating over the one issue that will concern the French people the most. It's not economy, and it's not jobs, and believe it or not, it's not even the rising prices. Like in a few other parts of the world, believe it or not, in the French elections, the issue that is going to take center stage is the Muslim headscarf, also known as the hijab. The French people seem to have got their priorities absolutely on the mark. And the far-right contender, Marie Le Pen, visited the south of France, where her promise to ban headscarf wasn't exactly received very well. There were some protests that broke out where some veiled women gathered holding up placards. And Marie Le Pen also interacted with a few, trying to defend her rather strange decision where she said that anyone found wearing a headscarf in France will be penalized.
Absolument rien. Mon projet n'est pas du tout radical, c'est un projet extrêmement raisonnable, c'est un projet qui donne plus de démocratie pour notre pays, c'est un projet qui est équilibré.
But the protesters, of course, weren't convinced, though. They say that Marie Le Pen is actually targeting a section of the French society, the French Muslims, and is putting the French unity in danger.
Je suis pas ravi de la voir, effectivement. C'est pas une personne que j'apprécie, c'est des gens extrémistes qui font... J'espère que la France tombera pas dans ce côté-là extrême. Je préfère que mon pays... Enfin, j'aime mon pays, je le trouve beau dans sa diversité, dans toutes ces cultures qu'il y a, et je veux pas que ces gens-là gâchent le paysage, quoi.
Meanwhile, the incumbent president, Emmanuel Macron, he has said that he has no plans of banning the headscarf, but he's made it clear that he intends to close down some of the mosques. And this is something that Macron has been actively working towards while in office, instead of focusing on improving the quality of life of people in France, improving their wages, promising them better pensions and work conditions. The French politicians are obsessing over hijab and what Muslim women wear. And also Emmanuel Macron's policies on mosques and Islamic seminaries is something that has come under a lot of flack internationally. Many mosques and Islamic groups have been shut down after investigations show that the institutions reportedly had links with radical organizations.
Je crois que l'extrême droite, à plusieurs reprises, a contesté certaines valeurs fondamentales, et quand j'entends ce qui a pu être dit par la candidate d'extrême droite sur la manière de réformer la Constitution, sur le retour sur l'abolition de la peine de mort, sur le rapport aux journalistes et leurs récusations, etc., etc., je pense que nous sommes en effet dans une autre catégorie.
So this, of course, is going to be the top of the agenda, that the French politicians are going to be battling it out. The 24th is the runoff, that is where the runoff presidential election will be held. Will be very interesting to see as to what the French people think when they are electing their next president. During the campaigning, Marie Le Pen has been facing much more hate than Macron. Marie Le Pen's strategy, although criticized, is still working because the rising hate is being compensated by the rise in her popularity. And it seems that she is very confident of winning the elections.
Ça me confirme dans l'idée que je peux gagner cette élection présidentielle, car la brutalité qui est exprimée à mon égard est proportionnelle aux chances que j'ai de gagner cette élection.
Now, the big question, of course, is why is it that Islam has become the top issue in this year's election in France? Remember, this is, of course, an issue that the French politicians keep talking about over and over again, and they've been doing it for the last many years. Now, France is home to almost about 5.7 million people who follow Islam. This is 5% of the total population, and half of them are born or naturalized French citizens. So the latest row over headscarf has sparked a lot of anger. They feel that their sacred clothing is being politicized unnecessarily, and the French politicians, instead of talking about jobs, employment and improving the life of the French public, are obsessing over hijab. Now, just days after being hit by an explosion in the Black Sea, Moscow has confirmed that its elite guided missile cruiser warship called Moskva has indeed sunk in the Black Sea. The 510 crew missile cruiser was a symbol of Russia's military might. It was leading its naval offensive in the war against Ukraine. And now the United States Defense Ministry has backed Ukraine's claims of where Ukraine had claimed that it had hit Russia's warship with cruise missiles. Pentagon on Friday said that the Ukrainian forces did indeed hit the Russian warship with 2 Neptune missiles, resulting in the ship catching fire and eventually sinking to the bottom of the Black Sea. Now, Pentagon's press secretary John Kirby asserted that the damage to the Russian warship will impact Russia's capacity to carry out this war in the near future, and that Moscow might be now compelled to reassess its strategy and approach towards this war.
They only have 3 in this class. It's a ship that is roughly 600 feet long. It has a crew of almost more than 400, almost 500 sailors on board. And it's basically designed for air defense. That's what this ship is designed to do, not unlike our own cruisers. So it's going to have an impact on their capabilities, certainly in the near term.
Meanwhile, the Central Intelligence Agency's director, William Burns, had said that the threat of Russia potentially using nuclear weapons in Ukraine could not be taken lightly. During an address recently, Burns spoke of the potential desperation and the setbacks faced by the Russian President Vladimir Putin amidst the ongoing war, and how he might now change his stance to shift the wind in his favor.
Given the potential desperation of President Putin and the Russian leadership, given the setbacks that they've faced so far militarily, none of us can take lightly the threat posed by a potential resort to tactical nuclear weapons or low-yield nuclear weapons.
Now remember, there is discrepancy as to the cause of the cruiser ship's destruction, while Ukraine has claimed that it hit Moscow with anti-ship cruise missiles. Kremlin has denied the claim, saying that the fire of unknown origin had detonated the ship's stored ammunition that triggered the explosion, resulting in the ship sinking to the bottom of the Black Sea. Now, according to reports, parts of the Russian warship are now being towed to the port of Sevastopol to assess the incident. Moscow, meanwhile, has warned Washington over military aid that is being supplied to Ukraine by the West. In the latest, Russia has now formally protested the U.S.'s ongoing shipment of weapons to Ukraine, sending a diplomatic note to the State Department warning of unpredictable consequences. This comes as the United States has now said that it is preparing to send an additional $800 million of military aid to Ukraine. Now, the Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson has confirmed that Moscow has sent some diplomatic notes to the United States and other nations about supplying weapons to Ukraine. In a statement obtained by Washington Post, Moscow has urged the United States and its Western allies to stop the militarization of Ukraine and also to further escalate the conflict. Now, there is no end, it appears, to the climate wars. The world is facing a sharp spike in the average temperatures. Experts have now made a pretty grim prediction over the future of cacti's survival. According to new research, around 60% of the world's cactus species will end up in dying over the coming years. and decades. As global warming sets in, this research has challenged the long-held assumption that iconic desert plants will thrive with more heat. By 2070, nearly about 90% of all cactus species could be threatened with extinction. And due to climate change, habitat loss and other stresses, as per scientists' reports in Nature Plants, this has tripled the current percentage. Nearly about 1,500 species of cacti spread across North and South America live in very different regions with varying climates. These range from sea-level deserts to the high Andes mountains, from bone-dry ecosystems to the humid tropical forests. Biodiversity hotspots rich in species and numbers include central Mexico and the Brazilian Atlantic forest. Researchers led by Michel Pillet from the University of Arizona examined the data on more than 400 species. He also ran models projecting as to how they would fare at mid-century and beyond under different greenhouse gas emission scenarios. The findings are extremely concerning. Interestingly, cacti is one of the most endangered groups of organisms on the planet, even without climate change. And more than 30% are classified to be at the risk of extinction. Under moderate emission scenario, in line with the current policies, global warming could soon add to that threat. The report further states that climate change will become the primary driver for the extinction of most species of cactuses that we see around us. Now, Cristiano Ronaldo may need to patent his famous celebration routine. A young footballer has pulled off the iconic move after scoring for Manchester United under-12 team. Brand Ronaldo, though, won't be fretting about the copyright infringement this time round. The young footballer in question, of course, was his son, Cristiano Jr., and he's a chip of the old block, like his illustrious father. We'll leave you with these visuals. Thanks for watching.
WION, now available on
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
hopping through Taliban's had gone down.
Hours of non-stop live broadcasts. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
Welcome to Melt. I'm Sharmishta Mukherjee, co-founder at Flying Cursor Interactive and recently turned author of the book, Cancer You Picked the Wrong Girl. Yes, we're trying out something new on Melt TV, where people from the advertising and marketing industry like me are taking over as anchors of the show. Every month, you'll see a new face welcoming you to the show, and I'm honored to be the one kicking this off. So let's get to it. Group M ESP, the entertainment, esports and sports division of media agency Group M India, recently released the 9th edition of its Sporting Nation in the Making report. The report states that sports sponsorship in India grew a whopping 62% in 2021 to cross the 9,500 crore rupee mark. That's not just a strong bounce back from 2020, but also a 5.5% growth over the 2019 top line of 9,000 crore rupees. The growth was once again primarily driven by cricket, of course, which constitutes 88% of the industry. To know more, Anant Rangaswamy, editor of Melt, is in conversation today with Vineet Karnik, head sports, entertainment and esports, Group M South Asia. So let's get ready to melt with Vineet Karnik.
Hello Vineet, how are you?
Hi Anant, all well Anant, thanks. How are you doing? All good?
All good. So good to talk to you because now with 90% of your revenue coming up in the next few months in terms of...
Not really, but yeah, I mean, yeah, significant chunk, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I was going through a report like I do every year, and I was hoping for the non-cricket revenue to go to 15%, 18%, 20%. That doesn't happen.
Right.
Is there any use covering other sports at all in this country?
Okay, so you have an absolutely valid point you're making, Anant, and I'm glad that you asked that question. In fact, the name of our report itself says it's Sporting Nation in the Making. So obviously, when we started off thinking about putting this together 9 years back, and this is the 9th edition, we obviously were very bullish and thinking about India becoming one of the most invincible sporting nations, considering IPL had given us such a massive headway and cricket as a sport had grown so much over the last 3 decades or so. So obviously we were all hoping that over the last 10 years, the emerging sporting economy, the way we call it, I mean the football, the kabaddi, the volleyball, badminton, table tennis, would have really catapulted, yeah. Having said that, obviously it started happening. So if you look at some of the numbers from 2013, 2014 point of view, the emerging sporting economy was really growing very, very well. What happened, we all know in 2020, and that sort of put in a serious amount of brakes on the newer sporting landscape per se, and that's the reason you are seeing a low number on the emerging sport compared to what we ourselves have reported in 2018 and 2019. Having said that, if you take a quick sneak peek into the numbers, overall the sporting numbers are back, and we are absolutely happy to say that we have grown at a pace of 62% over 2020, and that's a very, very encouraging sign for the industry. Yes, a significant amount of chunk, as always, has come from cricket, but nonetheless, we have seen kabaddi coming back, we have seen football coming back in terms of ISL, we saw volleyball league coming back, and I'm sure 2022 is the year when we are going to be seeing most of the leagues which couldn't happen because of COVID coming back in India, and that should help the numbers significantly in 2023 when we are reporting the 2022 numbers.
Okay, now a question which is a little off curriculum. Give me your comments on Baiju and the FIFA World Cup.
Okay, so great. So Anant, I haven't studied that. I've caught up the news. I'm sure you would want to know the deal size, you would want to know how many years and so on and so forth. And a lot of people have been calling us for this. I think we should be ready to give you some kind of an insight on this in the next couple of hours. So as of now, right now, we are not ready with those numbers.
Okay, now tell me, I'm never one to get excited about numbers. In principle, what do you think of the Baiju association with FIFA? What does it mean? What does it signify?
It's phenomenal, isn't it? For a brand which is going global, it very clearly says that an Indian edutech brand is going global, and that's the reason why the need of a global property. And we all know football as a sport, or FIFA as a World Cup body who runs football in the world is perhaps the most reached property from a sporting standpoint. And it's very clearly an indicator that Baiju as a edutech company from India has got global ambitions, and that's the reason why they have taken a position on such an important property, which is perhaps the biggest in the world.
I've also not got an idea of the granular details, but is it like one of those where, say, Lava Phones was a sponsor of Liverpool Football Club, for example?
Yeah, again, so as I said, we haven't studied the deal as yet. We will certainly get back to you once we are ready with this answer.
Okay, cool. So Vineet, now tell me, going by your numbers, the future of non-cricket sports is optimism and a punt. For a marketer, is it worth getting into non-cricket sport? And if so, what kind of brands and categories should attack non-cricket sports?
Yeah, sure. So that's again a great question, and I'm a big fan of these kind of things, because we really believe that from an India perspective, we are a one sporting nation as of now. But I think from the size and scale of a country, we definitely have a massive potential to have at least 2, if not 3 sports which are going to be seriously growing in this country. So from that standpoint, your question is absolutely welcome, Anand. And to give you a heads up and perspective on this one, we believe that somewhere the advantage of the emerging sport, and I would bring in the gaming and the e-sport here as well, and I would call it a sport because you know that we are going to be in Asian Games this year come September. So I would consider esports and gaming also to be an important aspect of this question. So therefore, I think that advertisers need to look at building a sport bottom up, because when you're building a sport bottom up, you're actually considering and engaging a new fan, right? Because cricket is a mass sport in India, undoubtedly the biggest sport in India. So if you need scale and numbers, which is at a blimp overnight, cricket is a sport to go with. But if you are a young brand and targeting younger audience or younger generation, today you would want to engage with them at a much early stage. So for example, if the purse size of advertising or sponsoring a kabaddi or a football or an e-sport league today is far different than sponsoring a cricket league, isn't it? From that standpoint, I think we need to engage and build these sports bottom up, and that's the advantage marketeers can take actually from a marketing standpoint, from a consumer engagement standpoint, where they're actually investing into a completely new sport, new audience, new economy, and actually growing with the sport. So that's the way we are looking at it, and that's what we advise our clients whenever we talk about sports strategies and so on and so forth.
Let's take a quick break here. When we return, we continue the conversation with Vineet Karnik.
code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker, weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all. If you fail to prove us wrong, God help us.
Welcome back. You're watching Melt and I'm Sharmishta Mukherjee, author and co-founder at Flying Cursor Interactive, taking over as anchor of this show. Let's continue our conversation with Vineet Karnik from Group M South Asia. In this segment, Vineet talks about the growth of esports as well as the IPL.
So Vineet, the world over, if you look at large sports properties, if the ticket size of a sponsorship is X, brands tend to spend 1.5x, 2x, 2.5x on activities related to the sponsorship. In India, even in the IPL, we're not seeing that. There's very little that, say, the franchisees say, except for RCB or a little bit Chennai Super Kings and so on. We are not seeing brands leverage sponsorship except for the money they put on their logo and the media. How do you react to that and what should brands be doing?
Yeah, sure. So you have a valid point, Anant. I mean, worldwide, we normally say that if you're investing $100 in investing in sponsorship, you should invest at least 100, if not more, in activating it. Yeah. See, today the activations itself world over, if you observe, has changed, right? So initially, when we used to activate, we used to look at a traditional campaign, which is print, TV, outdoor, digital. Okay. Today, if you look at India as a sponsorship market, most of the advertisers, and I would say almost to the tune of about 65 to 70%, are digital first advertisers who are, most of them are platforms themselves. Yeah. So activation from their lens is a very, very different ball game. So it's not that people are not spending on activation, they do spend on activation, but the spends are getting divided into multiple different platforms, multiple different media buckets. And that's the reason why you don't typically see a campaign of the natures that we would have seen in late 90s or in early 2000s. So yeah, I mean, we would encourage marketeers to do more, but it's not true completely that activations don't happen. Activations happen, but the fragmentation of media platforms are not able to give people the sense that the kind of money is being spent, because a significant amount of money today is spent on digital as a platform, which obviously is growing every year. So yeah, I think there is a scope, there is headroom to do more, but I would not completely agree by saying that people don't activate. People do activate. Yeah, I think there is headroom to grow.
Right. So, it's a funny market. We've got new brands coming into the sports space, especially cricket. I mean, for want of a different conversation, all sport is equal to cricket in my book, yeah. You go back to the beginning of IPL, brands which dominated TV at that time, say DLF and people like that, they don't even exist. Today we are seeing most of the visibility going to, new age companies as opposed to brick and mortar companies, shall we say digital first or tech first companies. So now all these brick and mortar companies once upon a time had the money and the need to use sports or leverage sport. Where is that money going, and where is that unmet need going?
Yeah, so it's a cyclic change, Anand. So, we have also been observing that change. So today what's happening is an appetite of the new age companies who are trying to arrest the consumer mind space or trying to create a sort of top of mind recall in the consumer mind space are the guys who are startups. And if you look at IPL, since you keep talking about cricket and you obviously believe and cricket is the biggest sport in the country, let's talk about cricket and IPL for a minute. If you look at the 10 advertisers on cricket on ground, okay, out of which 6 to 7 of them are the startup companies. Yeah, that's what you can't take that away. And those are the guys who are pushing the envelope from a marketing standpoint harder. Yeah, and therefore are trying to create a ecosystem and want to arrest the cricket fan base, which is absolutely mass in the country. So to answer your second part of the question, where is what happens to the traditional companies? Obviously, traditional companies have moved on and trying to do multiple things from a consumer standpoint. So they are, everybody is looking at their own marketing and communication strategy. Currently, sports obviously is the most attractive because obviously we all know that sports attracts appointment viewing from day one, and that appointment viewing is something where the startup guys are feeling the need to arrest more, and therefore they've been more aggressive on the sport as a sector, I would say.
Right. Now I'll come to another part of your report, which is there's a lot of attention paid to, esports, e-gaming, and surprisingly, you got NFTs, which have found a way into it. Now, all these, do they have any meaning at the top of the funnel in your brand? Or is it all just bottom of the funnel? Because I can't see any brand activity at the top.
Sure. So if you look at, I will talk about these things in two parts. One, I'll talk about esports, and then I'll come to the blockchain, NFTs. In our mind, from a sporting standpoint, it's fan tokens, more of that, but I will come to it. So basically, we always knew that a younger age group who's a 10-year, 12-year, going up to 24 or maybe 30, are playing games on their smartphones or consoles or whatever. We knew that already in 2017, 2018, right? So what COVID did, COVID catapulted that entire sector big time. And think that people like you and me would say, okay, perhaps people play game. We all started believing because it started happening in our own homes, in our own neighborhoods, and it was in your face, right? So therefore, definitely it had given a big advantage to the gaming and esports as a sector. Now, if you look at numbers in the esports part, they are massive. Okay, that all sort of numbers that are floating around in the market. We just did a gaming report which we launched 10 days back, where we said that it's a 15,000 crore industry, which is quite large, right? So today you might look at it from a bottom of the funnel where advertisers are trying to test waters and experiment with that business. But we definitely believe with the kind of attention the gaming industry from worldwide has, in terms of whether it's the worldwide federations or in India or the entrance of esports in Asian Games, Commonwealth, and hopefully Olympics, will definitely give it a huge thrust, and not only at an individual level, but at a federation level, at a government level, people will look at esports and gaming seriously, because at the end of it, you would want to win those medals going forward in the world stage. So therefore, these are multiple data points which we believe will help gaming and esports business take scale up from here. and therefore marketeers will look at it in a more aggressive way. Today I agree with you that it's a slow burn. People are only experimenting and scratching just the tip of the iceberg, but we definitely do believe in the next year or so we will definitely see serious amount of investments from a marketing perspective going into gaming and esports in India. So that's one part of the question. Second part of the question, which was around blockchain and NFTs, from a sporting standpoint, I would love to use this word called fan tokens, because today if you see, fans from a cricketing perspective have grown organically over 30-35 years, right? But the newer sports, a football or a kabaddi or a volleyball or a badminton or gaming or esports, yeah, will need a lot of help from a fan engagement standpoint. And today with blockchain technology coming in, I think fan tokens becomes a fantastic tool which will make fan engagement much more robust, much more accessible, and much more compatible to engage fans with. And no sooner you will see a lot of campaigns, and we are currently privy to at least 5, if not more, top companies in the country who are looking at taking serious positions and investing in fan tokens, where they believe that starting early will help them arrest that sector as well and go closer to the fans who are eventually their consumers. So I would want to believe fan tokens is something which is here to scale up. Year and two from now, we will obviously have these answers more clarified in terms of numbers and engagement. But we are very, very excited with gaming, esports, and fan tokens as a sector going forward.
So, Vineet, in your report, I read about opportunities for sports, non-cricket sports people, and opportunities for women sports stars, in the new scheme of things. But again, do they really get the eyeballs required to make for good brand ambassadors or endorsers?
I completely agree with that point in terms of whether the non-cricketing stars do deliver value to advertisers is what you are possibly hinting at. So you look at Neeraj Chopra. I mean, the kind of campaigns that he got after winning the gold, Olympic gold, were phenomenal. I mean, today the tally that Neeraj has that in our report is about 14 to 15 brands that he's endorsed. And look at the kind of value and mileage that he has got, the clutter that he has broken over the last 7 to 8 months. I mean, we've been observing those campaigns and some of the brands who are smartly using it. I think that's a very, very clutter breaking thing. Now, PV Sindhu, which we thought 5 years back is something who's a new kid on the block at an endorsement circuit, continues to excite advertisers, and today her tally is almost about 17 to 18 brands, which means that if there is consistency for a non-cricketing sports star over the last 4 to 5 years, and advertisers are consistently believing in marketing their products and services through these sports stars, I'm sure that's somewhere working in the minds of consumers. Otherwise, advertisers are the first ones to back out and possibly not continue those associations. So what we have seen right from the days of Mary Kom, Saina Nehwal, PV Sindhu, and now Neeraj Chopra is somewhere advertisers are very smartly utilizing them from a campaign perspective, helping because they help them break the clutter. At the same time, always remember, I mean, individual sports stars worldwide are always bigger than the team sports stars. So winning an Olympic gold or winning a Commonwealth medal is absolutely well respected, and that's what brings them closer to the consumers. And I think this trend will continue, because I am a firm believer that every year we have delivered well at various different world stages. Could be Asian Games, could be Commonwealth, could be Olympic, and the medal tallies only go up. And the endorsement seen from a new age sports stars point of view will continue to grow.
Now, this is the final question, and I want you to take a deep breath before you answer it. So the next IPL bid.
Yeah.
Give me a number.
Okay, so very difficult to give you a number, Anant, and I'll tell you the reason why I can't give you the number. Okay, there's number floating around in media multiple times. So unless and until we see the tender document, any number is a speculation in my mind.
Okay, that you ducked well. So let me now put you into a corner. So 2022 IPL, what will the TV revenues be? this current IPL?
As we speak, the consolidation of various different FCTs and inventories is happening. This particular numbers is getting consolidated, and we should be ready in about 10 to 15 days before we are ready to talk to you on that.
Okay, forget about consolidation. Give me the Group M number then. That you don't have to work hard.
So that's Mr. PK and Sid who will possibly help you with that.
Okay. Anyway, well ducked again. Okay, let me give you a number. I'd say 2,500 crores is Group M in this year's IPL.
That's damn good.
Let's see what happens with that. So anyway, let's see where that holds. So thank you so much. And, I think rather than talk to you only once a year, which is what we've been doing over the last few years,
right?
We should figure out a way to talk to you mid-year also, to try and figure out any changes in the landscape that are
Absolutely. We should review this maybe mid-year, and that will help us look at how the 2022 as a year will shape up, and we can do a roundup sometime in about September, October, because that should be a good season. IPL would have been done. We will be closer to the World Cup scene, so we will have far more deeper understanding of how 2022 is shaping up. So we should do that. And thanks a lot for doing this, Anant. I mean, absolutely appreciate, and always a pleasure to talk to you, because the kind of understanding and research and deep questions that you throw on us really helps us work harder to answer your questions. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Well, Melt will certainly be keeping a close eye on the IPL rights. With that, it's a wrap on this episode. You can follow Melt on social media. The handle is Ready to Melt, or simply log on to readytomelt.com. While you're at it, and if you'd like to, actually don't have a choice, follow me, Agent Greenglass, on Twitter and Instagram. Till next week, goodbye and thanks for watching.
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world. People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hopping through a Taliban-led call now.
Hours of non-stop live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
biggest vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent
oil and gas, or for example buying Russian oil and gas.
Now the war have made green energy much more compatible as finance.
And do you think that's possible right now, given 40% of Europe's natural gas and
we will need some time, because natural and renewable energy doesn't come in one day.
Well, thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start with the top stories of the day. Elon Musk has warned Twitter's board that it could face a titanic legal liability if it goes against the interests of the shareholders, adding that shareholders must have a say in the decision after the company said that it was adopting the poison pill strategy to block the takeover bid by Elon Musk. Meanwhile, Pakistan's National Assembly is likely to elect Raja Pervez Ashraf of the Pakistan People's Party as the new speaker in today's session, according to reports. And the Pentagon backs Ukraine's claims that 2 Neptune missiles were in fact fired by the Ukrainians to sink the Russian warship Moskva in the Black Sea. The United States has warned that the damage to this warship could actually now seriously impact Russia's ability to fight this war in Ukraine. At least 7 civilians, including a small child, were killed after shelling hit a residential complex in Ukraine's eastern city of Kharkiv, while over 30 are said to have been injured in the bombing. And North Korea holds a civilian parade and also a light festival to commemorate the 110th anniversary of the birth of Kim Il-sung, who is revered inside North Korea as the founder of the country. And defending champion Stefanos Tsitsipas and the second seed Alexander Zverev survived bruising quarterfinals to set up a blockbuster last 4 clash in Monte Carlo. All right, so let's start with the latest developments that have come in from Pakistan, where, according to reports, the National Assembly Deputy Speaker Qasim Suri has now resigned. In a statement, the PTI member has said that his decision to resign symbolizes his party's vision. And this latest resignation means that the National Assembly of Pakistan currently has no speaker. Now, the main speaker, Asad Kaisar, remember, had resigned last week just before the vote of no confidence was in fact brought about and voted upon against the former Prime Minister Imran Khan. And now the deputy speaker who had made that controversial decision of rejecting the vote of no confidence against the Imran Khan government has also tendered his resignation. Now, with the Russia-Ukraine conflict showing no signs of easing anytime soon, Moscow has said that it will intensify attacks on the Ukrainian capital in response to Kiev's alleged strikes on Russian soil. The Russia's defense ministry has warned on Friday that it will be scaling up its military offensives against targets in Kiev. This after Russia accused the Kiev nationalist regime of sabotage on Russian territory. Moscow said that the Ukrainian troops had targeted its border towns and amidst this ongoing war, alleging that nearly about 8 Russian civilians had been injured in the attack. Kiev, meanwhile, has denied Kremlin's claims. The Russian troops have now fired missiles at a machine-building plant outside of Kiev, calling it a retaliatory move. Moscow, meanwhile, has claimed to have brought down an Ukrainian helicopter that attacked the Russian village of Klimovo. And the Russian Defense Ministry issued a statement that 30 Polish mercenaries of a private military company were killed in the Kharkiv region.
Поделиться впечатлениями.
Давай, выходи.
В городе Мариуполь группировка российских войск и подразделениями Народной милиции Донецкой Республики в результате наступательных действий полностью освобожден от украинских националистов металлургический комбинат имени Ильича. Сегодня ночью высокоточными ракетами большой дальности морского базирования «Калибр» нанесен удар по военному объекту на окраине Киева. В результате удара по Жилянскому машиностроительному заводу «Визор» уничтожены цеха производства и ремонта зенитных ракетных комплексов большой и средней дальности, а также противокорабельных ракет. Количество и масштабы ракетных ударов по объектам в Киеве будут наращиваться в ответ на совершение киевским националистическим режимом любых атак террористического характера или диверсий на российской территории.
Moscow, meanwhile, has stepped up its attacks on the eastern city of Kharkiv. In the latest, Russian shelling has hit the residential areas in the northern Ukrainian city, resulting in deaths of at least about 7 people, including a small child. 34 other people also are said to have sustained some serious injuries. Kharkiv, which is mainly a Russian-speaking city near Ukraine's northeastern border, has been targeted repeatedly by the Moscow troops from the very beginning of the war. The Russian army has scaled up its attacks by hitting residential buildings and also other public spaces, with more than 60 artillery and rocket attacks that have been reported in just a span of a night. Now, the economic woes in South Asia continue after Sri Lanka and Pakistan. It is now the turn of Nepal that appears to be facing a crunch in terms of its forex reserves. According to the Nepalese central bank, the country is running low on foreign currency, which is needed to import essential supplies like medicines, fuel, cars and a whole other range of other items. The Nepalese central bank has now increased interest rates in an attempt to discourage people from buying imports and also help extend the forex reserves. The country is set to run out of funds in about 7 months if things do not change.
We have the foreign exchange reserve adequate for the import of almost around 7 months. Compared to the previous level, it has come down, but we can manage it because the number of migrant workers that have been going abroad, that is being increased.
The main source of foreign currency for Nepal happens to be tourism. It also draws from remittances from overseas workers and foreign aid. Usually hundreds of thousands of foreign tourists visit Nepal every year. However, this number has declined sharply due to restrictions that have been imposed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. But the good news for Nepal is that the tourists are beginning to trickle back into the country, with hundreds of climbers already applying to climb the world's highest mountains. And thousands of more are trekking on mountain trails. And the Finance Ministry has said earlier this week that the government is also working to reduce import of gold and luxury goods. But details of the plan have not been made public yet. Now, the Russia-Ukraine conflict has triggered a food crisis across the globe. And what is interesting is that India has now stepped in to fill the vacuum and has offered to export almost about 7 million tons of wheat. In the latest, Egypt has now confirmed that it will begin importing wheat from India. The Indian Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has confirmed the same. In a tweet, Piyush Goyal said, and I quote him here, Egypt has approved India as a wheat supplier. The Modi government steps in as the world is looking for reliable alternate sources for steady food supplies. He also lauded the Indian farmers by saying, and I quote him here, our farmers have ensured that our granaries are overflowing and we are ready to now serve the world. The Egyptian Minister of Agriculture, El Sayed Al Qasser, confirmed that India will be the latest addition to the list of countries that will serve as alternate sources of wheat for Egypt. This after an Egyptian delegation had visited India last week and had approved Indian wheat after technical studies of the Indian food grain. They visited fields and also grain warehouses as well as export warehouses in different Indian states, including in Punjab, Madhya Pradesh and Mumbai. Now, Egypt, interestingly, happens to be the world's biggest wheat importer and gets almost about 80% of its wheat imports from Russia and Ukraine. Now, according to the Observatory of Economic Complexity, Egypt imports anywhere from 12 to 13 million tons of wheat per year. While Egypt has been working to diversify its purchases, it's been holding talks with other countries like France, Argentina and the United States. India, interestingly, has stepped up its efforts to provide for the wheat shortage that has been triggered by the war in Ukraine. In fact, in a video address on the 12th of April, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi had to say something very interesting. He spoke about exporting food supplies to the world, and he said that if WTO were to change its rules, then India actually has the capacity to feed the entire world. Now, this was an issue that he raised with the American president as well during his virtual meeting earlier in the week, where the Prime Minister urged the World Trade Organization to relax its norms so that India could, of course, step in as a major food exporter.
કાલે હું અમેરિકાના રાષ્ટ્રપતિ જોડે ચર્ચા કરતો હતો તો એમણે પણ કહ્યું કાંઈક મોટું ત્યારે મેં એમને કહ્યું તમે અમને WTO જો પરવાનગી આપે થોડી રાહત કરી દે કે ભાઈ ભારતમાં જે ભંડાર પડ્યા છે તમે બહાર મોકલી શકો છો તો અમે કાલે મોકલવા તૈયાર છીએ. અમે તો ભારતને તો જમાડીએ છીએ. અમારા અન્નપૂર્ણા માના આશીર્વાદથી અમારા દેશના ખેડૂતોએ જાણે અગાઉથી દુનિયાની ચિંતા કરી હોય એમ, પણ હવે આ તો દુનિયાના કાયદા કાનૂનમાં રહેવું પડે એટલે હવે ખબર નહીં ક્યારે WTO એના કઈ સુધારા કરશે ને આપણને થશે.
Now, India is, of course, filling up a gap that has been left in the global food supply chain that has been brought about due to the Russian invasion into Ukraine. And India could be soon sending a lot of food grain to other countries, including Nigeria, Turkey, Vietnam, amongst others. Now, UNESCO's global geoparks are landscapes of geological significance. They seek to combine sustainable development and conservation by involving local communities. In the latest, UNESCO has now announced that it is designating 8 new sites as global geoparks spread across 7 countries. Our next report gets you the details.
This area in the south of Finland is one among the 8 sites that have been added by UNESCO this year to its list of global geopark. 46 countries around the world have UNESCO geoparks. These are pristine landscapes that are recognized for their geological heritage of international significance. The Salpaselka Global Geopark in Finland is vast and beautiful. It covers an area of 4,506 square kilometers and is home to over 177,000 people.
These sites have all gone through a very long process, starting actually with their own communities, with their local populations. It's a collective effort of local populations with academies, with universities, with local governments, basically with that one and same endeavor just to celebrate their unique geological heritage, as we call it, their unique landscapes, the geological unique sites that they're living on, to celebrate this and to see how they can make an income out of this as well. And very often this is through geotourism and local entrepreneurship.
The geopark is distinct for its stunning lakes and forests. Around 21% of it is covered by water and half by forest. The water is of very high quality and is stored in rock formations created by melting glaciers. It is these aspects that set this landscape apart.
Before you get everyone around the table and then manage to mobilize the funding as well, because there's always a certain, there's actually substantial funding needed if you have to start building geo-trails and visitor centers and parkings. So that can be a long process. And I think the community engagement and making sure that everyone is supporting the idea, that's probably the longest process. And that can be a matter of years. It's rarely a fast process.
The 8 geoparks in 7 countries have now been added to the prestigious UNESCO list. The recognition of a landscape as a UNESCO geopark is far from symbolic. It brings in tourists and more funding for its conservation. The idea is to get the locals involved in the holistic development of the region without affecting the pristine quality of the natural landscape. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
All right, let's also now take a quick look as to what is making news in the world of entertainment. The Russian superstar soprano Anna Netrebko has been hired to sing at Monaco's Monte Carlo Opera House after New York's Metropolitan Opera House dropped her for failing to make a statement against the Russian President Vladimir Putin. In her official statement, she had opposed the senseless war and the aggression, but then had not explicitly named Vladimir Putin in the statement that condemned the war. Netrebko will be singing the title role in Puccini's Manon Lescaut.
Herr Minister, bitte. Gib mal deine Kamera raus. Anna.
After 2 years of delay, actor James McAvoy opened the play Cyrano de Bergerac at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. The X-Men actor believes that Edmund Rostan's 1987 play will resonate with the audience. But the actor said that there is an understory in the play where a man feels that he's unattractive, and according to McAvoy, that's a feeling that 90% of men and perhaps women also grow up with. And Britney Spears is expecting a first child with fiancé Sam Asghari, and it's been an exciting time for her. The Hit Me Baby One More Time singer open up about motherhood and raising her sons, Sean and Jaden. With her third pregnancy, Spears has decided to indulge in some classical movies, books, great conversations, and even perhaps is thinking of starting a pregnancy podcast. Now, the pandemic has changed the way we work and how much time we give to our family. While some have opted for a sabbatical, there are others who've altogether quit the hustle, if they can actually afford to quit the hustle. But hybrid work models are now being hailed as the future of work, and men and women are demanding for more work flexibility. Take a look.
and shine. Squeeze in a quick workout. Send the kids off to school. Catch up with some morning news. Have your morning coffee only if you have time. And rush out the door only to be neck deep in peak traffic. Well, that's one way to start your day. Here's another. Complete your workout because it's me time after all. Enjoy your coffee and a leisurely shower and then change into your athleisure. But then you have to switch on your laptop and start your office work. And be neck deep in Teams calls, presentations and unending emails. You're working from home. There's no switching off. You juggle chores, attend calls, chase deadlines, and are always available for that last Teams call of the day. So which working model works for you? Something tells us you're not the one making that choice. You're the one juggling it all, forever on the move, drained and burnt out. The pandemic has changed our relationship with our jobs. A part remote, part office schedule is being hailed as the future of work. But this jarring one day in and one day out routine is exhausting for most of us. So does this hybrid model work for everyone? Probably not. Workplace policies are being rejigged in 2022. This, according to LinkedIn's Global Talent Trends 2022 report. Employees say that hybrid work is exhausting and emotionally draining. They say that they're burnt out. Everyone is demanding flexible working policies, an HR nightmare to say the least. And women are perhaps the biggest victims of these fast-evolving policies. Why? Because most of them feel they have two workplaces to maintain, one in the office and one at home. In India, the return of rigid office hours has spelled misery for women. A LinkedIn report says that 7 out of 10 working women in India have either left a job or are considering leaving one. Why, you ask? Because of a lack of flexible working policies. So is a hybrid working model ideal for us, or is working from home more suited for us? Another option, should we go back to rigid in-office schedules only to punch in and punch out? There's no easy answer here. There's no one-size-fits-all policy. Just like clothing, workouts and diets are tailored for us, working models also have to be customized. What works for one will not work for another. A 9-to-5 schedule is a thing of the past. Flexible working policies geared towards productivity are the future. But will that happen anytime soon? Your guess is as good as ours. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Well, that's all the time we have in this edition of the News Bulletin. Stay tuned to WION.
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all if you fail to prove us wrong. God help us.
One trillion species, 7.8 billion humans, 1.9 million species extinct, one planet. Where are we heading? What should we do? Watch Climate Tracker, only on WION. World is one.
From the world's most volatile region, conflicts over faith and boundaries. Stories of death, destruction, despair, and hope. WION brings you to the heart of the action. Incisive analysis, unrivaled perspective, and exclusive ground reports. Watch West Asia Post every Friday, 8:30 p.m. IST with me, Radi Francis, only on WION, World is One.
Stay connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for new alerts. Instagram for videos and images. And the website for the latest news, views and analysis. WIOnews.com. World is One.
The torrential downpour in South Africa may have subsided for now, but the trail of destruction has left a deadly impact on the lives of the South Africans. The death toll is now inching towards 400. Many still remain missing, while the government gives no indication on how many people have still not been found. South African authorities have said that they are releasing emergency funds to help tens of thousands of people left without shelter, water and power after the flash floods washed away homes and roads, wreaking devastation on the country's east coast. Volunteers are also trying to put a lid on the disaster. They are distributing basic necessities like food packets and water. The record rainfall has inundated parts of South Africa, especially the municipality of Durban. Nearly 41,000 people have been impacted by the deadly floods, while the local community members say that the state of the disaster is unprecedented.
Water just started putting, the lake exploded and the grounds exploded, Amlazi River exploded. It all happened at once. Within 30 minutes the water was shooting up. But we tried to put barriers, it didn't help.
The satellite image of before and after the heavy rainfall emphasizes the scale of the devastation. The province was declared a disaster area after shipping containers, bridges and even roads were washed away. Rescue teams have shared a grim image of the search operation with recoveries of only corpses.
But the devastation is quite vast. I mean, every single little stream or tributary turned out into a raging river. There's a lot of houses that have collapsed, a lot of buildings that have been washed away. The community is affected in a massive way. I think it's going to take... I've been working in search and rescue for almost 20 years. I am a Natal boy, so I'm from here, and this is the worst disaster that I've seen hit Natal in 20 years.
While Durban is overflowing with water, residents are reporting scarcity in drinking water. People are scrambling to get clean water from broken pipes and washed away tanks.
It's been so hard for us, and even water, electricity. In some other areas there isn't any water, electricity. As you can see how we suffering. Yeah, to get water. We're coming from Amandletu to fetch water.
Scientists and climate experts feel Africa's southeastern coast is on the brink of a major disaster, with global warming adding to the woes. The situation is expected to worsen in the near future. The death toll due to the Philippines' landslides and floods is now nearing 150. The country was hit by a tropical storm Maggie on Sunday, causing widespread damage, landslides and flooding. The Philippines is located on something known as the typhoon belt, which is hit by an estimated 20 storms every year. Some of these storms are catastrophic. The Philippines is still reeling from the effects of the super typhoon Dry, which hit the country in December 2021 and claimed more than 300 lives. The Philippines is among the countries most vulnerable to weather events attributed to climate change. Climate change has led to an increase in the quantity and intensity of the rainfall in the country. In recent decades, the number of rainy days increased, the Philippines' sea levels also rising more than the global average, which means that the low-lying areas in the country would be submerged permanently in the near future. Also, higher sea levels contribute to storm surges of up to 15 to 20 feet, putting at risk the Philippines' coastal population. Informal settlements on the coast are particularly at risk because of weak infrastructure, lack of health insurance, and limited access to drinking water. Rising temperatures have already damaged coral reefs, causing a drop in the fish population. Climate impact on agriculture also results in an annual GDP loss, which keeps rising by the year. Storm Maggie has already devastated farming and fishing communities. The Philippines Department of Agriculture has said that the agricultural damage caused by Maggie is estimated at more than $8 million. Now, in the near future, to face the challenges that climate change would bring along, the Philippines will have to build the country's capacity to manage climate-related disasters and strengthen policies to fight climate change. When a glacier the size of Rome collapsed in eastern Antarctica last month, it triggered alarm around the world. One of the major causes was global warming. But what phenomenon actually led to this collapse left the scientists wondering. A recent study has shown that the atmospheric rivers, also known as rivers in the sky, are causing extreme temperatures, surface melt, and sea ice disintegrations. Atmospheric river is a long plume of moisture that transports warm air and water vapor from the tropics to other parts of the earth and is playing a great role in destabilizing ice shelves on the Antarctic Peninsula. This is not the first time such conditions have been witnessed. Back in 1995 and 2002, during the collapse of Antarctica's Larsen A and B ice shelves, a similar phenomenon was observed. And now, with the projected warming of Earth's temperatures, the biggest remaining ice shelf in the Antarctic Peninsula, Larsen C, is also at a risk of total collapse. The authors of the study, published in the Nature journal Communications, Earth and Environment, used algorithms, climate models and satellite observations to determine that 60% of the peninsula's calving events were triggered by atmospheric rivers in the last 2 decades. But what does this mean for the already dire threat of rising sea levels? Scientists say that the collapse of Larsen C would spell bad news for the sea levels around the planet. Ice shelves can break off and cause sea levels to rise as well, but also noted that they do not add a huge volume to the levels. The reason is because they are already floating in the water. But more importantly, ice shelves play a critical role in preventing a much larger sea level rise. These inferences are proposed from one study. Scientists are still looking for more proof on what role the atmospheric rivers play. They say that similar events in the future will provide more clarity. And for a better understanding of the crucial climate concerns, we now tell you more about the importance of ice shelves. What role do they play in our ecosystem? Why are they so important? Our next report breaks it down for you.
Ice shelves are permanent floating extensions of an ice sheet connected to a landmass. Most are along the coast of Antarctica, but they can also be found in Greenland, Canada, and parts of Russia. They form when ice from enormous ice sheets approaches the sea as a glacier. If the ocean is cold enough, an ice shelf pushed forwards by glaciers does not melt. Over time it can grow, gaining ice mass. Sometimes it can shrink. Until recently, there was a rough balance between the amount ice shelves shed and accumulated. But now, the ice is melting, and melting fast, especially in the Antarctic. Scientists say warmer air and higher ocean temperatures are behind the change. Warm air melts the surface of the shelf, forming pools. The water trickles downwards through small cracks, making them wider. Meanwhile, warmer water circulates under the floating shelf, melting it from below, expanding the cracks further. Finally, an iceberg breaks away from the ice shelf, a process called carving. Scientists believe it's vital that ice shelves do not disintegrate. Without an ice shelf to slow their speed, glaciers would accelerate and flow into the ocean, contributing to a dramatic sea level rise.
People are taking energy prices into their own hands by switching to community-led energy production. As the rise in prices does not seem to be slowing down, hundreds of small groups that are creating energy around the UK are demanding that the government must make more efforts now to support them. Take a look.
Energy production is going off-grid and into the heart of the community as households brace themselves for energy price hikes. The country has seen a massive surge in the number of people who are signing up to join community schemes that generate electricity. Around 350 local councils in the UK are supporting efforts aimed at making a legal change that would make it easier for community energy groups to sell power. The wind turbines used for this are entirely owned by the customers.
The turbine is now completed. It's generating energy.
You have a chunk of this.
That's right.
It's your turbine.
I have a small chunk of that turbine. I put up just under £1,000. It'll take about 100 and something pounds off my energy bill a year.
As per the experts, community energy has the potential to become a part of a wider consumer movement.
I think the time has come that we don't need our energy assets to be owned by large companies. They'll always be a part of the mix, but I think consumers can increasingly be at the table as well.
However, there are also some who feel that the government could do more when it comes to supporting community-generated energy.
The reason that community energy has stalled is that the government, whilst saying that it's really important and that they really support it, have done nothing. They promised a plan in the net zero strategy and there was no plan.
The roofs of residential buildings are also being assessed to see whether they can be fitted with solar panels.
We have to, in some instances, limit the size of the installation we can put on the roof because whilst we benefit from the economies of scale in installing on at that site, any excess generation spills into the grid for which we get very little return. If we were able to sell that electricity locally at more of a market rate, then we will be able to use buildings which had very large roofs.
However, there are plenty of places where this technology can be used. Members of these communities feel that everyone who has the ability should be looking into getting community energy schemes locally, since there are so many local authority buildings and houses that are perfect for installing solar panels. In the Brecon Beacons, the stream is successfully generating power for users, but how does it work? The water comes in through smaller pipes which generate electricity through the turbine. Some energy customers feel that there should be more of a mix of big providers and community initiatives. So as prices rise, communities could cut their bills if they can install their own energy technology and tap into people's power. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Tel Aviv has announced a ban on all single-use plastic on the city's beaches from early as this summer. That's good news with the hot weather fast approaching. Our correspondent Jody Cohen getting us this ground report from the Mediterranean coastal city. Take a look.
Israel is addicted to disposable plastic and it's time to quit. That's what Environment Minister Tamar Zandberg said back in November when she announced a new tax on disposable plastic dishes, cutlery, cups and straws. The goal is for prices to double and for their use to be cut by 40%. This followed the introduction of a tax on plastic bags in 2017, which has reportedly already led to an 80% cut in their use. And now, in the latest move, the bustling city of Tel Aviv has announced a total ban on single-use plastics on the city's beaches from this summer. I spoke to some of the locals to find out what they think about the new initiative.
But it's a very good thing because, especially for our kids, because they spend a lot of time in the water and at the end of the day it ends up in the water. So we can use many things besides plastic, so that's definitely a good thing for everyone.
I do think it's a good idea that single-use plastics are banned from the beach,
as long as there are alternatives to use, because what do you bring water in, for example, and what would you actually use? Other plastic products got to be replaced with something else.
I also spoke with Eitan Ben-Ami, the director of Tel Aviv's Environment and Sustainability Authority, about the city's plans over the next 3 years to encourage businesses to cut out disposable plastics.
I'm happy to say that we started to ban single plastic use from schools and educational systems. Now we're moving to the beach to protect the beach and the water and everything around it. And now we'll move into businesses and the rest of the city to ban single plastic use from Tel Aviv.
The beaches of Tel Aviv are a central part of life in the city. Families and teens from across the country, as well as holidaymakers, all flock to the coastline to cool off in the hot, humid months. But from this summer, things will be a bit different. Tel Aviv has introduced new regulations that will ban single-use plastics on its beaches. This follows Israel's largest ever beach cleanup day, which was organised by a coalition of 32 environmental groups, clearing up the coastline at 80 stations across the country. It seems that Tel Aviv's addiction to plastic, at least, is set to be broken. This is Jodie Cohn for WION, World is One.
UNESCO global geoparks are landscapes of geological significance. They seek to combine sustainable development and conservation by involving local communities. And in the latest, UNESCO has announced that it is designating 8 new sites as global geoparks in 7 countries. Our next report getting you the complete story. This area in the south of Finland is one among the 8 sites that have been added by UNESCO this year to its list of global geopark. 46 countries around the world have UNESCO geoparks. These are pristine landscapes that are recognized for their geological heritage of international significance. The Salpaselkä Global Geopark in Finland is vast and beautiful. It covers an area of 4,506 square kilometers and is home to over 177,000 people.
These sites have all gone through a very long process, starting actually with their own communities, with their local populations. It's a collective effort of local populations with academies, with universities, with local governments, basically with that one and same endeavor just to celebrate their unique geological heritage, as we call it, their unique landscapes, the geological unique sites that they're living on, to celebrate this and to see how they can make an income out of this as well. And very often this is through geotourism and local entrepreneurship.
The geopark is distinct for its stunning lakes and forests. Around 21% of it is covered by water and half by forest. The water is of very high quality and is stored in rock formations created by melting glaciers. It is these aspects that set this landscape apart.
Before you get everyone around the table and then manage to mobilize the funding as well, because there's always a certain, there's actually substantial funding needed if you have to start building geo trails and visitor centers and parkings. So that can be a long process. And I think the community engagement and making sure that everyone is supporting the idea, that's probably the longest process. And that can be a matter of years. It's rarely a fast process.
The 8 geoparks in 7 countries have now been added to the prestigious UNESCO list. The recognition of a landscape as a UNESCO geopark is far from symbolic. It brings in tourists and more funding for its conservation. The idea is to get the locals involved in the holistic development of the region without affecting the pristine quality of the natural landscape. Bureau Report, WION, World is One. Easter is approaching and a UK-based chocolate maker is hoping to celebrate differently. His Easter eggs are wrapped without plastic and the cocoa beans are sustainably sourced. We're leaving you with this special report. Thanks very much for watching.
Super
Supermarket shelves are stacked high with cheap chocolate eggs. But one company is making the difference, especially when it comes to chocolate making for its Easter eggs. Welcome to Chocolada. It's based in Falmouth in southwest England. It began as the passion project for Mike Longman, a former pastry chef and the brand's founder. Chocolada is one of a handful of bean-to-bar chocolate makers in the UK.
We create an uncompromising Easter egg in every way that we can. It still tells a story of incredible projects, incredible farms, but it's in an almost impossible shape of this balloon of an object, packaged completely plastic-free, which really does give you something to celebrate Easter with.
Chocolada's process begins with sourcing organically grown beans from single-estate, family-run plantations. These are to be found across the world, from Madagascar to the Dominican Republic. The beans are roasted, winnowed, stone ground, roll refined and polished, only to develop the chocolate's individual flavour before being left to mature for at least 28 days. The chocolate is then tempered and crafted into bars and eggs before being wrapped in plastic-free packaging. In the process, also restoring some antique production machines.
Lots of chocolate makers buy big stainless steel machinery. It obviously serves a purpose and it makes chocolate, but actually we want our machines that have made chocolate perfectly in the past to do exactly the same for us. Talking about our roaster that's about 100 years old, it's obviously served its purpose brilliantly well and we want to continue its life.
Their products are sold at markets, Chocolada's own shop, as well as in the high-end department store Selfridges in London. These eggs cost up to $34, but credit the company's ethos and the taste, customers don't quite feel the pinch. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
One World Trade Center, that is the one where the
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hopping through a Taliban-led wall now.
live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive.